The wind scraped across the mountain pass like a dull blade, carrying bits of frozen dust that rattled against the traveler's windshield. The old toll road, a narrow, zigzagging strip of cracked pavement, was supposed to be closed until late spring. The ranger station bulletin, the warning signs at the fork, even the locals down in the valley all said the same thing. No one maintains that stretch anymore. But tonight, as the traveler's headlights swept over the final bend, the impossible came into view. The gate was raised. The rusted metal arm, usually chained shut and padlocked, hovered in the air as if someone had just pulled it upward moments ago. And the booth, that crooked wooden box leaning slightly into the wind, glowed from the inside with a warm, steady light. A silhouette slumped behind the fogged window, shoulders hunched, head angled toward a ledger. Someone with a job no one had worked in 20 years. The traveler slowed, engine grumbling. He waited for the booth window to slide open, for a voice to call out, for anything that made sense. But nothing moved. The figure inside remained still, not breathing, not flinching, not even twitching. Finally, he rolled down his window and tossed a few bills into the rusted tray. They landed with the softest whisper, too soft, he thought, for how cold the metal should have been. No reply, no thanks, no drive safe, just silence. He drove on, but after 30 yards, something tugged at him. Instinct, guilt, or maybe the primal feeling that he had just passed through a doorway meant to stay closed. He glanced back. The booth was empty, completely empty. The chair pushed in, the small light flickering on an untouched desk. The snow, thick, crisp, untouched, lay smooth in every direction. No footprints, no tire tracks, no sign anyone had been there, except for the gate, which was now lowering, slowly, methodically, precisely the way a person would pull it down if that person were standing right there, gripping the rope. But no one was. The traveler felt his stomach flip. His headlights dimmed for half a second, just a blink, and in that blink he thought he saw a dark shape slick into the booth, not walking, not appearing, just existing suddenly where emptiness had been a moment before. And the road ahead, once merely dangerous, now seemed to stretch into a place he wasn't sure belonged on any map. He pressed the gas. The mountains swallowed him whole. The mountains swallowed sound so completely that the traveler felt like he was driving inside a vacuum. Even the engine seemed embarrassed to make noise. The road stretched ahead in a thin gray ribbon, too clean, too empty. For a path abandoned 20 winters ago, it looked strangely maintained. Snow clung to the guardrails like frostbitten moss, but the pavement itself was bare, clear, as if something heavy passed through minutes before he did. He tightened his grip on the wheel. The last turn sign had been knocked sideways, its metal twisted like someone had tried to wrench it out of the ground. The traveler slowed. The headlights hit the damage just right to show deep gouges, parallel, jagged, like the sign had been dragged across the asphalt before being tossed aside. And then he saw them. Tire tracks. 2 narrow lines pressed into the snowbank along the shoulder, fresh, so fresh the snow hadn't yet crusted around the impressions. The tracks led straight down the road, hugging the edge like the driver had been too scared to center themselves. Someone else came through the gate, the traveler thought, and not long ago. But why would anyone take this road? It connected to nothing now. Every map app flagged it as inaccessible, and the nearest town, if you could call a place with 10 houses a town, was miles behind him. He followed the tracks with his eyes, watching them snake forward until they disappeared around a bend. Each curve looked tighter than the last, like the driver had approached it too fast, or maybe swerved to avoid something. The traveler's breath fogged the cabin. A flicker of motion brushed against the left window, so fast he couldn't tell if it came from outside or from his own reflection twisting in the glass. Just a dark smear, gone before he could blink. He scanned the empty pines. Nothing. Yet the silence had changed. It felt aware now, pressing in on the car, crowding the edges of his hearing. The air smelled different too, faintly metallic, like cold iron left out in the rain. Around the next bend he braked hard. The tire tracks split. One set continued forward, steady and straight. The other veered sharply off the road, cutting across the frozen ground toward the tree line. But they didn't curve down gradually. They shot off at a violent angle, like the car had been yanked sideways. The snow where the tracks ended was crushed flat, scattered in a fan shape. Beyond that, nothing. No broken branches, no skid marks, no impact crater. The vehicle had simply stopped existing. He exhaled, slow and shaky. Whatever happened here, it didn't leave evidence the way it should have. His headlights caught something on the snow. A streak, dark, thin, running from the edge of the vanished tracks back toward the road. He leaned closer. It wasn't blood. It was rust. A single line of rust, as if something old and corroded had been dragged along the ground. The same reddish smear he'd seen on the toll booth window earlier, when he thought it was just dirt. The wind rose suddenly, carrying a low, almost conversational hum, like a voice buried under snow, trying to remember how to speak. The traveler hit the gas. He wasn't sure where the road led anymore, but going back felt like the worst idea of all. The higher the traveler climbed, the less the road felt like part of the world. Pines rose on either side, sharp and black against the pale sky, their branches drooping under the frozen weight. The wind had stopped entirely now, as if even nature held its breath. Inside the car, everything seemed normal until the radio flickered on by itself. A soft crackle, a rush of static like snow hitting glass. He reached for the knob, thinking he'd brushed it accidentally, but before he touched it, a voice began to form inside the static, slow, broken, like an old tape playing through a dying speaker. Stay on the main lane. The traveler froze. That phrase, main lane, sounded like the announcements old toll operators used to say. He'd heard it once before on a historical video about this very road, but the recording was from the 70s, and this voice wasn't grainy or old. It sounded present, close. Do not stop for any shapes. Shapes? He swallowed hard. The static thickened, then thinned again, unraveling into another fragment. If you see the booth, just drive. His pulse thudded in his ears. There was only one booth on this road, and he'd already passed it. He switched the radio off. It switched back on instantly. You're late. The voice wasn't emotionless anymore. It sounded disappointed, irritated, as if whoever, whatever, was speaking had been expecting him. The kind of tone a manager uses when an employee strolls in after their shift started. A brief hiss cut through the cabin. Then a new sound replaced the voice, a rhythmic thump, like footsteps on wood, slow, heavy, getting closer. Thump, thump, thump. He checked his mirrors. Empty. The back seat. Empty. The road behind. Empty. But the sound kept going, perfectly paced, perfectly spaced, as if something were walking right beside the moving car, somehow keeping up without effort. He gripped the wheel so tight his knuckles whitened. The voice returned, low and urgent now. Do not answer if it calls your name. His name? No one on this road should know his name. A burst of static tore through the speakers, and then, clear as day, soft as breath, right behind his seat. Hey. His heart nearly stopped. He didn't turn, couldn't. The radio snapped off on its own. The footsteps ceased. The cabin went dead quiet. For a full minute, he drove without breathing. Then the radio screen flickered. Once, twice, a new message appeared across the digital display, letters forming slowly, like they were being typed by an unseen hand. Booth ahead. Stop for collection. But he'd already paid, and according to every map, every sign, and every local warning, there was no second booth on this road. The traveler eased his foot off the gas as the road dipped into a shallow valley. Pines crowded the edges again, their branches bending low as though trying to hide whatever lay ahead. The radio remained dark, but the dashboard lights trembled faintly, as if reacting to a presence he couldn't see. Then he noticed it. A glow. Faint, amber, a few hundred yards down the road. His stomach tightened. The digital warning on the radio screen, booth ahead, hadn't been a glitch. There it was. A second toll booth, standing exactly where no map, no archive, no local story had ever placed one. This booth was newer than the first, though still worn by seasons. The paint, peeling white, hung in flakes. The window was fogged, but a shape sat inside, unmoving, not slouched like before, upright, still, watching, or facing, or waiting. The traveler slowed almost to a crawl. His hands sweated against the wheel despite the cold. The silence deepened in a way that made his ears ring, like the whole mountain held itself perfectly still. The gate in front of the booth was down. The booth's inner light flickered once, like someone had blinked. A small metal collection tray slid outward on rusty rails. He shook his head. "No," he muttered, voice cracking. "No, I already paid." The booth didn't care. The tray pushed forward a little more, scraping the wood, a sound like nails on bone. Behind him, the road was pitch black, the kind of black nothingness that felt filled instead of empty, like anything could be standing in it. The traveler cracked his window an inch. Cold air slapped his face, sharp enough to burn. He heard breathing. Not his, not human. Slow, heavy, like someone dragging each inhale from very far away. He dared a glance into the booth. The silhouette remained perfectly still, too still for a person. The head was tilted just slightly upward, like it was sniffing the air. Its shoulders were too broad, its neck too long, as if the body had been put together from memory by someone who had never actually seen a person before. The tray slid another inch. The radio snapped on. Not static this time. A recording. Old, warped, a man's voice too cheerful for the darkness around him. "Please deposit toll for safe passage." The traveler froze. He recognized the voice instantly. It was the same one he'd heard on the static only minutes ago, but polished, rehearsed, as if from an ancient broadcast. Another crackle. The same voice, now whispering directly into the cabin. Do not stop. Do not pay. Do not let it mark you. The booth lights snapped brighter, as though offended. The silhouette shifted. Not much, just enough, and the gate twitched upward a fraction of an inch, as if whatever occupied the booth was preparing to stand. The tray shoved itself outward one last time, hard enough to clatter. A soft tap-tap sounded on the back window. The traveler didn't look. He slammed the gas. The engine screamed. The car lurched forward. The booth shot past in a blur of light and frost. As he sped away, he saw the gate in his rearview mirror. It rose, slowly, deliberately, and the silhouette inside the booth leaned forward, placing its face against the glass, watching him go, as though it now knew him, as though it recognized something in him worth following. The traveler didn't slow down for several miles. His headlights carved narrow tunnels through the dark, and every shadow seemed too solid, too aware. Only when the road curved sharply around a cliff did he ease off the gas, afraid of skidding into the abyss. He risked a quick look in the rearview mirror. Nothing. No booth, no lights, no silhouette. Just the same consuming black that seemed to swallow everything behind him. His breathing steadied, until he noticed something odd on the windshield. A smear, thin, brownish red, trailing from the top edge to the center. At first glance, it looked like dried mud. But mud didn't usually leave tiny metallic flecks. Rust. The same rust he'd seen in the snow where the mysterious tracks ended. He flicked on the wipers. The streak didn't budge. Instead, the blades stuttered like they were scraping over something rougher than glass. Not possible, he thought. The car was barely a year old. He pulled to the side. The pine branches above hung so low they brushed the roof, whispering like fingertips. When he stepped out, the cold bit into him instantly, forcing sharp breaths. He circled the car and stopped dead. Footprints, a single line of them, pressed deeply into the snow on the passenger side, overlapping, one after another, spaced too evenly, like someone walked in place for a long time before stepping away. But that wasn't the worst part. They weren't his. They weren't shaped like any human boot. Each print ended in elongated, rounded impressions, as if something heavy dragged a strange, curved object behind its stride. And the snow inside each footprint was melted around the edges, refrozen into glassy rims. He felt the air grow heavier. Something rustled in the trees. A branch snapped, clean, loud, purposeful. The traveler backed toward the driver's door. His breath came out in hot bursts, fogging the cold air. When he reached for the handle, he saw it clearly. On the side mirror, a handprint. Not smeared, not sloppy, pressed with intent. The fingers were too long, the palm too narrow, the grip too strong, denting the metal slightly. His pulse slammed in his ears. Then, from deep in the woods, something called out. Not a word, not a sound any throat should make. A low, resonant groan, like metal warping under pressure, the same pitch the first booth gate made when it moved. He dove into the car and slammed the door. The forest fell silent. Only then did he realize the footprints in the snow didn't lead away. They ended right where he stood moments ago, as if whatever made them had been waiting for him and had left only when he got out of the car. The road narrowed as the traveler climbed higher, turning from cracked asphalt into a ribbon of uneven concrete. The forest pressed close, branches arching overhead like ribs of some colossal creature. Even the moon seemed reluctant to shine here, its light fractured by the shifting mist. When the first faded sign appeared on the right, he almost missed it. Lodge, 0.5 miles. The arrow pointed toward a thin trail branching off the main road, but the metal plate was twisted, as if something had grabbed it and wrenched it sideways. He hadn't seen any lodge on the map. Nothing existed up here. And yet, as he drove the last half-mile, a shape materialized through the haze. A motel. 3 stories. Old American roadside style, slanted roof, creaking balconies, neon sign barely holding on to life. Mountain Lodge. Only 2 letters fully lit. Ma, space, underline, N, L, underline, D, G, E. The rest flickered like an exhausted heartbeat. He slowed. Every window in the building was dark, except one on the 2nd floor. A single warm square of light, glowing like an eye watching him arrive. The curtains twitched slightly, as if someone had just stepped away. The parking lot was empty. No cars, no footprints, no signs of life. Snow lay smooth and untouched, except for the twin trails made by his own tires. Still, the office door at the front was propped open. A bell hung above it, silent, expectant. The traveler stepped inside. The smell hit first. Dust, old pine cleaner, and something else underneath, something metallic. The lobby looked frozen in time, a dusty rack of brochures for attractions that no longer existed. A dead vending machine, humming faintly, like it remembered being useful once. The front desk sat beneath a dim lamp, and next to it, a guest book, open, pen resting neatly beside it, and fresh writing on the last line. Checked in, 11:07 p.m., room 214. But the signature wasn't a name, it was a shape. A crude outline of a hand with elongated fingers, drawn slowly, deliberately, as if the artist wanted to make sure it was recognized. The traveler's throat tightened. Behind him, the entrance bell jingled suddenly, once, softly, as though someone had nudged the door. But the door hadn't moved. The air shifted, the light above flickered, and from the hallway beyond the lobby came a quiet sound. Footsteps. Slow, measured, approaching. He backed toward the exit. Another step. Another. Then the footsteps stopped, and a cold breath brushed the back of his neck. He turned. The lobby was empty. Only the guest book lay open, the page fluttering gently as if touched. And on the next line, fresh ink bled through the paper, forming letters he didn't write. Room 214 is expecting you. The hallway beyond the lobby stretched long and narrow, lined with faded carpets and framed landscapes that seemed to warp in the dim light. The traveler hesitated at the threshold, every instinct telling him to turn back. But the lobby door had slowly creaked shut behind him, though he hadn't touched it, and the air felt heavier, as if the building itself expected him to continue. He stepped forward. The carpet muffled his footsteps, yet the echo that followed wasn't his. A half beat after each step, another sounded, softer, dragging slightly, like a foot not fully lifted off the ground. Room numbers drifted past in flickering gold. 206, 208, 210. Each door he passed seemed colder than the last, as if something pressed its weight against the other side. At one door, 212, he caught a faint reflection in the brass peephole, a stretched silhouette behind him. He spun around. The hallway was empty. His breath fogged the air, though he wasn't sure when the temperature had dropped so sharply. The lights above him buzzed in uneven patterns, casting jerky shadows that made the walls seem to pulse. When he reached room 214, he stopped. The door was cracked open. Just an inch, enough to show darkness inside. A small paper tag dangled from the handle, handwritten in shaky ink. "Welcome, guest. Check-in confirmed." He didn't touch it, didn't want to. Instead, he nudged the door with his foot. It opened silently, like it had been waiting. The room was mostly normal. Bed, bureau, dusty curtains, but the smell hit instantly. Cold air mixed with something metallic and ancient. Not blood, something older, something that didn't belong to living things. And then he saw the footprints. They circled the bed, deep, warped impressions pressed into the carpet fibers, the same elongated shape he'd seen outside in the snow, the same strange spacing, as if whatever made them walked slowly, savoring each step. On the wall above the bed, the wallpaper sagged outward in a strange bulge, like something had pushed from the inside, or was still pushing. The traveler's throat tightened. A faint creak came from the wardrobe, then another, then a long, slow exhale from within. He backed up, heart hammering. The wardrobe door shuddered once, then again. Then it eased open a sliver, revealing nothing but blackness inside. Yet from that darkness came a whisper, thin, distorted, scraping like rusted metal. "You're late." The same voice he'd heard on the radio, the same tone the booth had used. The darkness inside the wardrobe seemed to swell, stretching towards him, like a shape unfolding itself. The traveler lunged backward into the hallway and slammed the door shut. Something struck the other side immediately, once hard enough to rattle the frame. Then silence, except for a low, pleased hum from behind the door, like whatever was inside wasn't angry. It was satisfied. As he turned to run, he saw that the hallway lights had all gone out except one, far at the end. Beneath it stood a figure, tall, still, facing him, waiting, and the only way out was straight towards it. The traveler didn't remember running, only the cold rush of air slicing past him as he fled down the cramped hallway. The lights flickered violently overhead, stuttering like a dying pulse. Behind him, room 214's door rattled with soft, deliberate knocks, each one too steady to be frantic. The figure at the end of the hall didn't move. It just stood there, tall enough that its head brushed the dim ceiling lamp. Shadows clung to it unnaturally, refusing to let the light reveal a face. As he approached, the figure simply collapsed into itself, folding like smoke being sucked downward. In seconds, it was gone, leaving only the faint scent of metal behind. He burst into the lobby. The front door swung open on its own, as if pushed by a sudden gust, but no wind followed. Snow drifted in gently, settling on the carpet without melting. The traveler hurried toward the exit, but something on the front desk caught his eye, a stack of yellowed newspapers that hadn't been there before. They were neatly arranged, as if a guest had recently checked out and left them behind. The top paper bore a date from 15 years ago. He shouldn't have stopped, but he did. The headline stretched across the front page. Toll operator found missing, only shoes left behind. His blood ran cold. Below the headline was a photo of the old toll booth, the same one he'd encountered first. Snow stretched around it in smooth, untouched waves. The operator's chair was empty, just like now. A paragraph beneath the image described how several toll workers had vanished over consecutive winters. Their last radio messages were distorted by strange interference. One worker claimed something kept calling his name through the static. The traveler's stomach twisted. Then his eyes fell on a smaller boxed article at the bottom. Witness reports second booth sighting on closed road. Second booth. He leaned closer. The report claimed hikers had seen a lit booth further up the mountain, but when authorities investigated, it wasn't there. They dismissed it as optical illusion. Except someone had drawn a crude sketch next to the article. The booth, the gate, the silhouette inside. And just below the sketch, handwritten in shaky pencil, "It moves." A sharp tap suddenly struck the window. The traveler jerked his head up. Outside, something stood near the fogged glass, tall, narrow, pressing one impossibly long hand against the window pane. Its fingers dragged across the glass, leaving streaks of reddish residue. Rust. The same rust that smeared his windshield. The lights in the lobby dimmed, the newspaper pages rustled, and from somewhere deeper in the motel, a voice whispered, "Still late." The front door slammed shut with a violent shudder, trapping him inside, and the thing outside began to walk, not away, around, as if circling the building, searching for another way in. The traveler didn't wait to see if the thing outside found a door. He ran down the hallway, past the lobby, past the dead vending machine humming like it remembered a different decade. The motel's back exit led into a narrow service alley that spilled onto a snowbank sloping down toward the main road. He slid, stumbled, caught himself, and kept moving. The air outside felt wrong, thicker, drained of warmth, as if the night itself leaned closer to listen. Somewhere behind the motel, wood creaked. Something heavy dragged across siding, a slow, scraping stroll. He didn't look back. The road stretched ahead, pale and empty, and for the first time since he'd entered the mountains, he noticed something new. The fresh tire tracks he'd been following earlier, they now looped around, crossing his path, circling the motel once, twice, then continuing straight back down the mountain, as if the previous driver had been forced to return the way they came, as if the mountain allowed only one direction now. His car sat exactly where he'd left it. Frost had crept over the windows like skeletal fingers, but when he grabbed the handle, the door opened easily, too easily, like someone had checked it from the inside. He slid behind the wheel, slammed the locks, and turned the key. The engine coughed, hiccuped, then roared awake. The headlights flashed on. Something moved in the beam for a split second, too tall, too thin, before vanishing into the tree line. He floored the accelerator. The car rocketed forward, tires spitting snow. He followed the looping tracks down the road, praying they'd lead him out. But after a mile, his hopes collapsed. The tracks didn't continue onward. They curved sharply, right back to the toll road entrance, right back to the first booth. The booth's light glowed in the distance like a single watching eye. The gate was raised again, waiting. The traveler's breath fogged the windshield. His mind raced. There was no other route, just cliffs and snow-choked forest. The mountain wasn't letting him choose. As he approached, the booth came fully into view. Empty, silent. The chair inside was overturned now, as if something had left in a hurry. On the window, smeared in long rust-colored streaks, was a message, a handprint, and beneath it a single word traced by something sharp. Return. The radio crackled. Not static this time, a clear, tired voice, the same voice as the official toll announcement, but stripped of all cheer. We can't leave until someone takes our shift. The gate jerked, violently, once, twice, then it began lowering, not slowly this time, fast, urgent. The traveler slammed the gas. The gate lunged downward, the silhouette of something sprinting beside him, too fast, too jagged, flashed in the corner of his eye. He shot under the gate just as it slammed shut hard enough to rattle the car. The headlights illuminated the endless dark road ahead. Behind him, through the rearview mirror, he saw the booth light flicker. Then a shape stepped inside. Tall, elongated, familiar. It sat in the chair, lifted the gate's pulley rope, and pulled it back up again, waiting for the next traveler. As the booth receded into the black behind him, the radio whispered one last line, "We're free now." And the traveler realized he had taken the shift.
Snowflakes hit the windshield in chaotic spirals, each one catching the headlights like tiny burning embers before dissolving into nothing. The traveler kept driving, gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles throbbed. The mountain road stretched endlessly forward, too straight, too smooth, too wrong. He should have been descending by now. He should have seen a town light or a road sign or anything human. Instead, the darkness only deepened. His breath fogged the cabin. He tried the radio, the heater, even the interior lights. Nothing responded. The dashboard dimmed to a sickly, flickering glow, barely enough to show the needle hovering uncertainly between speeds. Then the engine sound changed. It didn't sputter. It didn't stall. It simply slowed, as if the car itself realized something. The traveler pressed harder on the gas. The pedal sank uselessly to the floor. The car kept rolling, but gentler now, like a funeral carriage coasting downhill. And then, through the thinning snow ahead, he saw it. A booth, another booth, lit from within by the same tired amber glow, standing crooked on the side of the road, same shape, same leaning roof, same rust bleeding down the window. His pulse cracked in his ears. No, I passed this! I passed! But the car was already slowing to a stop in front of it. The gate lifted, smoothly, gracefully, as if recognizing him. He tried reversing. The wheels spun uselessly against ice that hadn't been there seconds earlier. The steering wheel locked itself in place, refusing to turn, as though something invisible held it firm. Then the booth window slid open with a slow, mournful groan. Inside, the silhouette sat upright. This time, though, it wasn't the elongated shape. It was human. Broad shoulders, a bent posture, hands resting on a ledger. Familiar. The traveler's chest tightened, and the cold inside the car grew unbearable. He unbuckled his seatbelt without meaning to. His fingers acted on their own, numb and obedient. The door unlocked with a soft click. In the booth, the silhouette lifted its head. The light caught its face. His face, older,
hollowed, eyes dim and bruised by endless nights, a face that had been sitting here a long, long time. The figure raised a shaky hand and pointed toward the small tray beneath the window. The rusted sign above it read, "Collection due. Shift begins upon payment." "No, I'm not staying. I'm not—" His double leaned slightly forward, lips parting. The voice that came out was paper-thin, crumbling under its own weight. "We all said that, the first night." The booth's door creaked open behind the figure, revealing nothing but blackness, deep, endless, swallowing. The kind of black that didn't reflect light, didn't accept it, didn't allow anything to leave. The air around the traveler tightened, pushing him gently, like guiding hands at his back toward the window. He reached into his pocket, not willingly, not fully awake. His fingers closed around a coin, a rusty toll token he had never seen before. His double nodded slowly, exhausted, resigned. The traveler raised the coin, his fingertips shook, and the moment it touched the metal tray, the booth lights died. Darkness swallowed everything. When the world blinked back into view, he was sitting inside the booth, ledger open, gate rope in hand, a cold breeze seeping through the cracks in the wood. Outside, the road lay empty once more, except for a pair of headlights approaching slowly, cautiously, just like his had. In the reflection on the booth window, his face looked older again, fading at the edges. He tried to stand, his body didn't move. He tried to call out, his voice wouldn't rise. Somewhere beneath the desk, unseen gears shifted. The gate began to lift. Another traveler was coming, and the mountain always collected.